Right, Isaiah chapter 43 is our text today. Isaiah 43:15. Linda, you want to get by over this way? You can just scoot right, or you're going to sit right there? Okay, good. Isaiah 43:15 to 19. Isaiah says, speaking to the Israelites, I am the Lord, your Holy One. This is God talking through him. Israel's creator and king. I am the Lord who opened a way through the waters, making a dry path through the sea. I called forth the mighty army of Egypt with all its chariots and horses. I drew them beneath the waves, and they drowned. Their lives snuffed out like a smoldering candle wick. But forget all that. It is nothing compared to what I am going to do. For I am about to do something new. See, I have already begun. Do you not see it? I will make a pathway through the wilderness. I will create rivers in the dry wasteland. The title of my sermon today is Forget About All That. I went to a conference this past week, and yes, I didn't go anywhere to the conference because it came to me in the more modern methods that we deal with now. It came through a virtual connection that I had. It was a conference that was actually happening in Virginia, but we were able to also sign up and attend virtually, which is a wonderful, wonderful new way to do things and brings things and resources to us that never would have been available before without traveling all the way to Virginia, which I don't really feel like doing right now. But so I went to this conference, and the conference was about this. What is the future of the church in America? And it's a subject that fascinates me, and I guess for obvious reasons. This is what I do. And the conference had lots of different information, speakers and experts on the subject, the latest and the biggest thinkers on this subject matter. And I have to say, I have great news for you, okay? The conference gave me great news. I'm here to tell you that the experts and the leading thinkers all agree that the church in America has an exciting and dynamic future. Amen. It has an exciting and dynamic future. Great things are right now happening in the church in America. All of the believers in America, that's what the church in America is. Great things are happening, and great things are going to happen and continue to happen more and more in the church in America. God has already begun to do something new in the church in America. Jesus will be glorified in new and wonderful ways within the church in America. But there's the big but. You know what the big but, when someone, you ever know, remember this when you were young and you asked a girl out or you asked a boy out, that way. I think you're a wonderful person and we're great friends, and then you're bracing for it, the big but. But, oh no, not the but. Not the but. And this is but, B-U-T, no two T's, okay? So stop that right there. Ralph, I know you were thinking it. No. The big but. The future church in America will look nothing like what you remember the church to be in the past. That's the big but. I have a deep church history in my life. I've never been a time in my life where I have not been a part of the church. I was christened as a Catholic as an infant. I was raised Catholic until First Communion and all the way through until I was about 11 years old, 12 years old. I went to other churches with my dad extensively. Even in college, I was involved with Campus Crusade for Christ, the campus ministries that were available up at University of Maine and other places I was at college. I've never been a time where I haven't been in church at any point in my life. And I remember one church that we joined. It started in a hotel restaurant. This was back in 1987. It started in a hotel restaurant called Triumphant Life Church. I'll never forget it. It was the pastor there taught me the foundational theology for my life. He was good. He was excellent. But we started in the restaurant, and then eventually we moved to a high school auditorium, and then another high school auditorium, and then another building after that, and then eventually we bought this big gargantuan building in the city of Worcester. It was called the Oddfellows Home. It was an old, the Oddfellows, this like a retirement home or a convalescent home. What do you call those things? Is that right? Convalescent? Yeah. It was old. I mean, it was scary. It was creepy walking through all these buildings. I mean, floors and rooms and everything was abandoned. It was creepy. But anyway, we spent unknown amounts of hours restoring, repairing, demolishing, rebuilding, creating Sunday school wings in there. We built a whole brand new sanctuary on that building, and it was wonderful. We had people coming. We had people their lives were being changed. And Jesus was working in ways every single week at this church. And I worked so hard. I mean, one time I was working, painting part of the Sunday school wing. It was the night before Thanksgiving, after midnight. And one of the gentlemen there in charge, he was actually living there in a little apartment that we had built. And he said, "Go home, come on, it's Thanksgiving, go home." But he just wanted to do it. He just wanted to be a part of that because things were happening. And I was excited. And so, in years, I attended church there, youth leader, started youth groups, all this stuff. And it was wonderful. You know where it is now? Gone. The building's abandoned. It got spun off into a couple of smaller different churches that went elsewhere. And all of that work, gone. Oh, who is right, Roy? Yeah, I mean, it's sad. Yeah, but boo-hoo, I agree. Most churches in America, I'm going to say majority, if not most churches in America, are experiencing similar kinds of things. This is what's happening. Many modern churches, more modern churches, and nearly all traditional churches like ours, we're declining in numbers. It's not a secret here. We're not like trying to tell you something that you don't already know. But if you do not know that, we're not alone. Most traditional churches, if not nearly all of them, are experiencing what we're experiencing, have been experiencing over the last 10 years or more. And I always love when people say this, and I've said it before too. Well, it's because they put sports on Sundays now. That's why no new families come because they're all at the soccer fields on Sunday mornings. No, it's not the reason why. The reason why they have sports on Sundays is because most people don't go to church on Sundays. And they all sit around and think, well, when would we like to play sports? Well, we're all free on Sunday, so why don't we just play on Sunday? It's like a chicken or the egg thing, what came first? Did sports come first or the decline in the church come first? It's the decline in the church came first. That's what precipitated that. Sports on Sundays. Anyway, so I mean that's, when I was young growing up, I saw, most of my friends were at church. Just about every mass I went to, and Sunday or Saturday evening mass, I could pick out so many of my friends just there. We were all in CCD together. Most everyone went to church, and our friends, we used to ask each other, the ones that didn't go to Catholic church, what religion are you? We didn't really know it was all Christianity, but we just said, what church do you go to? Because everybody really went to church. I don't remember anybody that didn't go to church. It was given that you went to church, but that was the last generation of those that went to church. And it's changed, And I'd rather it not have changed, personally. I think there are exciting things ahead in the church in America. But if you really want to be honest, I'm like you. I wish it never changed. It was good. It was so good. Back when I was young and just after I got married, we started attending a small church in the town that we were living in Grafton, Massachusetts. I still consider it my home church. I still follow the Baptist Church of Grafton and what they're doing down there because it was so important to me. It became such a huge part of my life. It's like we walked in there and all of a sudden we were home. Do you ever get that feeling? And so you walk in there and you're home. You know, Lent is coming home. I felt at home there. And there were families like that went by the name of the Johnsons and the Kings and the Libbys and the Engvalls that became such a big part of my life. I joined the choir. I was the only one with brown hair, not gray hair, in this big choir. And they all made fun of me because of that. And I'm like, I'm the one with the brown hair, you know, which is fast turning gray, by the way, so don't say anything. Anyway, the Pastor Don and his wife Carol, they were such a huge part of my life. Oh, just supportive, helped me all through seminary. I mean, my kids were born in that church. They were dedicated in that church. It's like they had a whole church full of grandparents that were just there for them always. I think when I was up in Calais, Maine, way up in the willywags of Maine at my first church, for my ordination service, I mean, it was, 8 hours away up in Maine. I think over 15 or 16 people from my home church traveled up for the weekend and spent the weekend at my ordination. And that's how powerful it was, and the close relationship we had. But could they do that now? No, because they're dealing with the same things we are. I follow them all the time. They're struggling like we are, and like just about every church is struggling. Churches like the one we're in, they're dealing with the same things. Remember that Bruce Springsteen song, Glory Days? Oh, they'll pass you by, talking about a baseball player, talking about his old baseball, games and all, how he used to strike people out all the time. And he's 20 years later, and he's still talking about how he used to strike people out all the time. It's the glory days, and we talk about them. And they, like Bruce said, they'll pass you by. Church used to be people's lives. We remember this. Worship, community service, socializing, friend groups, they were all in church. Remember women's groups in church? Yeah, they used to exist in church. Churches used to have women's group with the women's parlor. We had one. The women's parlor, and that was all fancy, and no one could go in there because that's the women's parlor. Yeah. So many churches had that because there was people to do that. Big choirs up front, youth choirs that used to actually put robes on and sing some choir songs. This is what used to happen. Sunday school teachers' staffs, like a staff. Imagine that, a staff of a slew of people to pick from them rather than two people struggling to do it together. And there was a lot of kids. There was knitting groups and decorating committees and countless committees involving a great number of volunteer church members. We had committees to form other committees. The nominating committee. We used to have one here too. Those are the good old days. Those are the glory days. And it's kind of like what the Hebrew people were saying too. They were in captivity. They had lived in Jerusalem so long ago, and those were the glory days. And they had been pulled out by the Babylonians and shoved up there in Babylon. It was years ago. And it was so long ago that the kids, I'm sure, didn't even remember. They didn't know what it was like to live in Jerusalem, but the parents and the grandparents, I'm sure they loved to tell the stories about how it used to be in the days. Remembering the times when God worked in powerful ways. Look at our text, Isaiah 43. This is God talking to them about those good old days. God says, I am the Lord your God, your Holy One, Israel's creator and king. I am the Lord who opened a way through the waters, making a dry path through the sea. I called forth the mighty army of Egypt with its chariots and its horses. I drew them beneath the waves, and they drowned. Their lives snuffed out like a smoldering candle wick. You can almost hear the Hebrew people breaking into song and celebrating and rejoicing with these words. This is the story of their faith. This is the Passover story where they were delivered from Egypt. It's a central story in the Hebrew faith, and it still is. It's the glory days. It's like Archie Bunker and Edith singing Those Were the Days as he was sitting in front of the piano and they sang, Those Were the Days. I remember that show. Kind of an awful show, but hey, it's what we watched, it's the old days, yeah. The glory days. We remember clearly how great they were. We tell it to our kids and grandkids. I know we do. You know, the days about this, if you can drag your kids to church or your grandkids to church once in a blue moon. Yeah, I have that problem too. We talk to them. You know, we tell them about the sanctuary. You know, we say, you know what, kids, grandkids, this used to be full every Sunday morning and Sunday evening, because that's what we did back in the days. And what do they say? Oh, really? Yeah. Wow, that must have been great. Yeah, I'm sure that was wonderful. That must have been great for you. This is what they do. Well, full. There we are. You know, go back. Can you go back to my picture there, Roy? My sermon picture. There's a reason why the rear view mirror is so small and the windshields are so large in cars. You know what the reason is? It's because where you're going is much more important to see than where you've been. That's the reason why the rear view mirror is so small and the windshield is so big. And you need a big forward-looking windshield. You need it because the view can be hazy and blurry sometimes, or foggy, and the road can be unfamiliar and uncertain. So you need a big windshield to see everything and to look through. I was listening to our executive minister, Dale Edwards. He's the executive minister of the American Baptist Churches of Vermont and Hampshire, one of our denominations, and this is our region. Well, he's the executive minister. He's a wonderful man, brilliant man, I think, and very caring man. He was saying recently in a message about this subject, because we're all talking about it in the church. We all are. All the leaders are, because we're all experiencing the same thing. Anyway, he said this. He said, 20 years ago, talking about his church experiences and the good old days, he said, 20 years ago, I could still see in the rear view mirror what the church used to be like the good old days. I could still see it in my rear view mirror. But now it's so far back, I can't even see it in the rear view mirror. It's so far back, the way things used to be, the good old days. One of the speakers at the conference I attended, Todd Balsinger, I think some of you may have read his book recently. It's called Canoeing the Mountains. I think, Bethany, didn't you read that one? Somebody read that book, Canoeing the Mountains, and was telling me about it. Anyway, he was one of the speakers at the conference, and his book, Canoeing the Mountains, it's a grid book. It's about Lewis and Clark's expedition across the America, and they were looking for a water route from the east all the way to the west coast, and they were going to do this by canoe. Well, they really weren't aware of what they were getting into, and they ran into something. It's called the Rocky Mountains, okay? And so how many here know that you just can't canoe over the Rocky Mountains? So what did they do? Did they look endlessly for a waterway path over the Rocky Mountains? It's got to be here. Let's just keep looking. Let's just keep getting this canoe up there a little bit further up. It's going to happen. There's going to be water up here. No, they didn't do that. What did they do? What did they do? They left their canoe behind, and they went ahead in the way that they needed to go ahead, because that's what they needed to do. And for us, and the speaker was relating this book that he wrote to the situation in churches. He said, churches, we now need to leave behind our canoes and find new navigational tools to move forward over these mountains ahead of us. Churches need to leave the canoes behind and trek on. This is what he said. So much of what we know to do in church, so much of what we automatically do, what we know to do in church, and what we love to do in church, we love to keep the church going as it's always gone. We love that. We're familiar with that. That's comfortable for us. It's the good old days. Why wouldn't we want to do that? I want to do that. But obviously, and we're all realizing, all ministers, churches, church leaders, we're all realizing it's not working anymore. It's clear. We used to disciple new members and young people. Remember young people in church? Yeah. We used to disciple new members and young people to take up the work of the church. So we pass things on to them like committees and responsibilities and duties, and it was an honor to do that and to receive that. And to take that on was an honor. It was important, and it is important. But we don't do that anymore. Why not? Because there are very few new members and young families in church. It always makes me laugh when I hear of churches that are looking for new ministers, and they all say the same things. We're looking for a new minister that will bring the young families back into church. And I'm like, oh boy, here you go again. You realize you're trying to float that canoe up the mountains. It's just not going to happen. Anyway, we still feel compelled. We still feel compelled, and I understand why. We still feel compelled to figure out how to continue on all that we've done in the past. There must be a way to canoe over the Rocky Mountains. If only we just, of course, there isn't a way to canoe over the Rocky Mountains, but and people aren't willing to take up what our parents and grandparents left off in the life of the church. And we look at this reality, and we all look at this reality, and we look at the sparse attendance, and we look at the lack of volunteers, and we scratch our heads and we say, where are they all? In churches all across America, everywhere you look, they're feeling like their ships are sinking. This is the general consensus. The morale of pastors right now is at an all-time low. Many have resigned because of the pandemic, but the morale of pastors is at an all-time low because they don't know what to do. They don't know. And our ships are sinking, and we don't know how to patch the holes. And the holes are too big to patch in the first place. So how do you patch a hole that's too big? You can't stick your finger. It's too big. And I think what some churches have resigned to do, and I'm sad about this, some churches and pastors and people in the churches, they've resigned to going down with the ship. And I guess there's a certain nobility in going down with the ship. It's an honor. I guess there's a certain honor in that. But you know what? God is not calling us to go down with any ship. That is not God's call on the church in America and this congregation as well. You remember that story, that little cute story about the person who was stranded in a flood and standing on top of their roof or something like that, waiting to be rescued, praying for God to rescue them. God, please come rescue me. And then a boat comes by and says, hey, come on, I'll rescue you. And they say, you know this story. And they say, no, I'm waiting for God to rescue me. A helicopter comes by and drops down one of those rope ladders. Come on up. No, I'm waiting for God to rescue me. And then they all go away, and then they say, God, why didn't you rescue me? And God said, well, I sent how many people over there to rescue you, and you didn't come? And they say, well, I was waiting for you. And God says, well, that was me. It's like that's how we are in the church sometimes. We're waiting, we're waiting to be rescued the way we've always been rescued in the past. This is the way it's always happened in the past. And we want God to save the church and to build it up as it always has been in the past. I do. I know many of you do, if not all of you want the same thing. But it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And there's this thing that we have in life called acceptance, and we need to accept that. Every church needs to accept that if we're going to move on. If we don't accept it, then the churches that don't accept it are going to go down with the ship. You know that there are people and believers out there doing amazing things in our nation? You know, they're out there. They're all over the place doing amazing things. I saw someone come in with the Isaiah 61 sweatshirt on over here. I see a sweatshirt. Yes, they're doing amazing things. And I just got approved to be a volunteer up there. And I'm excited about that. And I can't wait to go to the first volunteer meeting and see how I can participate up there and also see how we can maybe connect with that homeless shelter up there in Laconia that I think is doing incredible things. And there are lots of groups and small pockets of believers that are doing these types of things. Lots. They're all over the place. You know, I think one of the big trends in churches today, and I got excited about this when I heard it at the conference, One of the big trends in churches today is called dinner church. Dinner church. Yeah, and we kind of do this on our food for thought, and I think it's wildly fun and exciting, and it's thrilling. It's new, it's fresh, it's food. We love food. Come on, and it's fun, singing and a little message time afterwards. But there's a difference between the new dinner churches that are coming out. A lot of the new dinner church ministries coming out, they're small pockets of people, and they're doing it, and that's all they do. They only do dinner church. That's all they do. It's not a program meant to feed Sunday morning attendance. And that's key. They don't do dinner churches, and we really don't either here. I'm not saying that we do that, but I'm saying what we often do in churches is that we design new and creative ways to bring people in with hopes that we'll get them on board and we can recreate the past again. We just want that past again. And if we can just get people in here somehow, in some way, we can convince them that the glory days were great. And they're going to want to be on committees, and they're going to want to be on guilds, and they're going to want to be on altar committees and the nominating committee. They're going to want to be on committees about committees about committees. Because that's what's great for us. Why wouldn't they want to do that? I don't understand.
It's not fun.
That's what they say. That's what they would say. They say, I don't want to be a part of that. You know what people say when I ask them why they don't go to church? They say, I've got enough drama in my life, really, honestly. And I thank God. I really honestly do. And I love you guys, and I love everybody in this church. I thank God that we work together so well, because it's not this way. Ask Pastor Linda, she knows. It's not this way in many, many, many churches. We work well together. We actually like each other. A lot of churches don't have that. A lot of churches in our area don't have that. And there's some stories that are even going on right now that's like, that's terrible. It's awful. God is doing amazing things through countless small groups of people with faith. And the message that was at this conference that I attended was very clear this past week. The message was very clear. The message is this: we can join with them, or we can go down with the ship. And that's a hard message to hear. We can join with them, or we can go down with the ship. And again, don't kill the messenger, okay? I'm just relaying to you what the people that really, really dive into this a lot and study this a lot, and they're good, sincere, honest Christian people. And they're not saying this to be like, it's my way now, buy my book. No, what they're doing is saying, this is reality. And we're trying to get this message to churches and congregations that will hear it. That's what they're trying to do. They said, we have to let go of the need to grow Sunday morning attendance. We have to let go of that need that we have. It's our need. It's not God's need. It's our need. Understand? Because as Sunday morning attendance grows, what happens? We feel good. Because it's like the olden days again. I remember when all these pews, then we get back into that Archie Bunker mode, and we can't go there again. Yeah, those were the days. And we're down here today because we're getting new carpets installed upstairs. And you know what? The carpet is going to be beautiful. I don't know if you've seen it yet. It is going to be beautiful. And we needed to do that because our carpets were gross upstairs. You all knew that. They were gross. And we've got to take care of this historic meeting house that we have. We've got to. And we've got some more work upstairs. If you look up, you'll see it. It's up there. It's not going anywhere. It's actually coming down on our heads. It's what's happening. The paint chips are falling down from the side. We got more work to do, and we need to do that work because we need to take care of our historic church building and keep it in great shape. But I'm telling you right now, it will do nothing to grow the church, and we need to get that in our brains right now. It will do nothing to grow the congregation. Every church could do this, and it's not going to do anything to grow the congregations because that's not what people need. People don't need new rugs. Our church building needs a new rug, and it does, and we're putting one up there. Thank God that we have the ability to do that. And I'm so happy and pleased that God gives us the ability to do that. But it's not going to move our congregation forward to have new rugs and new paint on the ceiling eventually. It's not going to do it. And so the logical question that you're going to ask me right now is, what will grow our church then? What will grow our church then? And here's what churches have been trying to do for the last 15, 20 years. Because we've been seeing this for 15, 20 years or more, especially up in New England, because we're always, ahead of all the curve on all these things. This is what churches have done for the last 15, 20 years. Well, we need to try harder. Things are declining, so we need to try harder. We need to change the programs that we offer at this church. We need to create new worship services. We need to spice up the old worship services. We need to redouble and triple our efforts with the remaining 25% of our former members. We need to mobilize everyone and get them all doing something. You know what that does? It burns them all out. And then we're like, we're exhausted at the end, and then everyone everyone can be exhausted as the ship sinks, and that's not what I want to do. I don't want to do that, and none of us want to do that. No churches in America, we don't want to do that. Part of, and this is the irony, right? Part of the point I'm making is that looking to grow our church. And when churches look to grow their church, it's what keeps them from growing. You understand what I'm saying? When churches look to grow their congregations, it is actually what keeps them from growing. Because we wind up spending all of our energies on things that are not going to work. And you're going to say right now, you're thinking in your head, Pastor Chris, this is so depressing. I can't stand this. And you know what I'm going to say? Yeah, I agree with you. Where's the hope? You told us that there's all kinds of great, grand hope out there that they're talking about. There is great, great hope. Instead of trying hard to grow our congregation, instead of trying hard to grow our church, we need to be looking and working to grow as a church. There's a difference. Instead of trying to grow our church, we need to be looking to grow as a church. And there's a huge difference between the two, a big, big difference. As I said in the beginning, there is great news. And I am here to tell you that the experts and leading thinkers agree that the church in America has an exciting and dynamic future in America, but, again, the big but, the future church in America will look nothing like what you remember the church to be in the past. Active gathering congregations, they used to be very monochromatic, right? And our church still is monochromatic. You know what that means? We're all one color, right? Churches that are actually active in gathering on like Sunday mornings are more and more becoming ethnically diverse, and that's it. And that is certainly one of the ways that churches are changing, multicultural. Churches used to be gatherings of community folks with like-minded beliefs about God. They worshiped and fellowshiped together, meeting houses and sanctuaries. Generations attended together, we all know this. Long family legacies form the histories of congregational life. Now and in the future, congregations will be gathered around specific outreach functions, and that's it. Specific outreach functions. Groups of believers and seekers and not yet believers will be united and are being united for a common purpose or a social cause or a benevolence effort, and these will often be shorter-term coalitions, not generational families keeping church traditions passed down and passed down. Home churches, home congregations will be more and more vibrant and powerful, but very, very small. And they'll gather around dining room tables and in living rooms and around fire pits and on walks in the woods and afternoons at the playground and the park. That's where they'll gather. Whenever. Sunday morning, doesn't matter. And here's another thing. Ready for this one? I'm going over a little bit today. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna. Yeah. I all winter long, I still like to ride my bike, so I ride it on an indoor trainer. It's called Zwift. There's other versions of this kind of a thing too. But if you're on Zwift, you ride your own bike and you have a smart trainer that's attached to it, and it goes through your computer and onto a screen, and you can ride your bike and you see yourself on the screen as an avatar. Does everybody know what an avatar is? It's your own computer-generated person. So you can see yourself on your bike and as an avatar on this computer-generated screen. It's like a game, and that's really kind of what it is. Anyway, I'm there riding on a road, or I've joined a group ride, or I've joined a group workout on my bike, or I've joined a group race on my bike, and I am there literally with people from around the world all riding around me. And on the right-hand side, I can see all of their names, and I can see the flag from the country which they come from. And so on any given time riding my Zwift, I am actually riding, virtually, but actually riding with people from England, from Australia, from China, from Japan, from everywhere. Anywhere you can imagine around the world, I'm riding with them. And I was riding my bike one day thinking, oh my gosh, this is the future. This is one of the futures of congregations. And to be actually virtually doing this with people. And I'm not just, like seeing pictures of like someone riding somewhere at some time. No, I'm actually riding. I can interact with them. I can give them like what they call thumbs up or kudos. We can talk, we can chat. And there's a translator that will translate my chat with them if I want to talk to them while we're actually riding. And it happens all the time. That's one of the futures of congregations. We call it virtual reality or the metaverse that you're hearing about so often. And it's different. It's going to be different. I mean, you might say, Pastor Chris, I don't want to go to church with my VR goggles on. Those big, awkward goggles. And you're in your living room and it's quiet and you're doing all this stuff with goggles on and sensors on your hand and you look silly. Pastor Chris, I am never going to do that. I know, most of us won't. I don't want to do that either, really. I get it, believe me. But that's one of the ways that congregations will gather from people around the world, gathering virtually with avatars. And it's already happening. And it will continue to happen more and more and more. Here's a comment I hear, the last couple of years. And a lot of churches, pastors are hearing the same comment. When are the Facebook people going to come to church? We're open again. When are the Facebook people coming to church? You know what my answer is? Never. They already are.
A long flight from home.
They already are at church. Welcome, Facebook people, to worship. We're worshiping together, and this is it. Well, yeah, but that's not real church. Or they're just being lazy. Oh boy, they want to be sipping their coffees like you're doing right now on Facebook Live with your PJs on. I know, I can't see, but I know what's going on there on Facebook Live. Or even recorded time afterwards. They're just being lazy. I don't like Facebook church. Half the time it cuts out or there's some other tech issue involved with it. The sound goes or the flip. Hey, you know what, Roger? I have to tell you this, Roy. I was at this conference, and this conference was on cutting-edge trends that the church has to engage with. Technology is integral to this. And you know how many technology problems they had? Oh my gosh, the whole conference was fraught with video problems, with sound audio problems, they couldn't get it right. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, if this conference, which is really about this, if they can't get it right, I feel a whole lot better in our little congregation here with our itty-bitty budget and our resourcefulness to do what we're doing. Well, yeah, that's how you do it. Pastor
Roger does a great job.
Roger.
You too, Roy.
Pastor Chris, I don't like what you're saying. I don't either. I could just go on preaching and pastoring as if nothing were happening. I could just try to isolate us and say, hey, let's just live it out, Let's just hang on to what we have here as if nothing was changing. Remember the stories of the Titanic when the Titanic was going down? What was happening on the board of the ship? The band played on. Remember that? You know that story? The band played on, trying to make people calm as if nothing were happening. The ship is sinking. And it's like, I can't just let the band play on. We can't do that. We can't do that. In my rearview mirror, it's my home church, Baptist Church of Grafton, isn't it? That's what it's getting harder and harder to see it in the mirror as I follow what they're doing down there. And what's happening is the same thing that's happening in our congregation and congregations all over America. And it's tempting to drive while looking in that rearview mirror. But what would happen if we did that? What would happen if you drove looking in your rearview mirror the whole time? Bad things. Bad stuff would happen. I don't want bad stuff to happen. Pastor Chris, what about those big new successful churches that you see down in Concord and other places around there? What about them? They seem to be killing it, doing a great job, right? No, they're not. You know what they are? They're regional churches. They draw from a large region around, and they pull people from towns just like ours, believers from towns just like ours, who would normally go to the small town church in town, but they pull them to these regional churches. And if they want to be successful, they've got to pull from further and further areas. And now they're pulling from virtual church attenders. Is it health? No, it's not. It's like, it's a bandage that's going to peel off very shortly. It's not a sign of health and growth. It's a sign of a last-ditch effort to grab everybody away from the small-town churches, by the way, and pull them into the regional churches because they have slick programs and things that attract them in. It is what it is. I get it. It's a business model. That's what businesses do. They look for customers. Yeah. Anyway, the good news is that the church of Jesus Church will never, ever go away. It is eternal. It's not going anywhere. We need to know that and remember this. We, the church, will continue to bring the kingdom of God into this world. It's just going to do so in a very different way. And there's no getting around it. Verse 18 of our text, God says, but forget all that stuff that was awesome, all that's the glory, good old days. God says, forget all that. It's nothing compared to what I am going to do, for I'm about to do something new. I've already begun. Do you not see it? I will make a pathway through the wilderness. I will create rivers in the dry wasteland. Does that mean we should forget the good old days? No. We remember them, but we understand that we must move forward. We've got to look through the windshields. Time is now. The months ahead will be, no doubt, thinking of new ways to get connected in different ways, to do things that we need to do as a congregation, to be connected with new ideas. We'll be doing that, no doubt, in the months ahead. I know we will be. This is a beautiful, beautiful congregation. And I believe we have a beautiful, beautiful future here. Yes, it'll look different. But I believe it's going to be a wonderful, beautiful, beautiful. And whenever you lose someone that's important in your life, what do? You grieve them. And I grieve, honestly. I grieve this reality. I grieve it. And I know you do too. I grieve the loss of all that was so important. But when you grieve someone that you've loved and have gone on, what do you need to do? You hold that love in your heart and you go on living. You go on living because it's the right thing to do. And because life is still there. And there's still life ahead. And there's still God's glory ahead. And the church is still here. And we still have a mission. And it's still good. It's still really good. As a matter of fact, in so many ways, it can be even better. It can be. Not the same, I get it. But it can be even better. We move forward. we, as God says in verse 18, we forget all that because it's nothing compared to what God is going to do. Let's come to our communion meal this morning as we conclude our service. Things like this will never change. Things like the reality of what Christ did for us will never, ever change. And that is the kind of stuff that we lean on. Prepare to receive today. Those worshiping with us at home can receive with whatever you have at home. The Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, he took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, "Take, eat. This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Christ has died. Christ is risen. Christ will come again. Let's take and eat the supper that remembers the eternal truth that will never change. Christ's broken body for us. In the same